Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student. Today, we are going over avoidance and their correlation with cheating. Okay. So, before we get into that, I do want to mention that not all avoidance cheat. Okay. So, do avoidance cheat? Any attachment style can. I would say that insecure attachment folks tend to cheat more than secure. There's research on this, but I have seen. Actually, to be completely honest, fearful, avoidant, or anxious, preoccupied might cheat a little bit more. That is what I've seen when I'm practicing. And usually it's because their needs are getting not met by their dismissive, avoidant partner. And so they desire it from somewhere else. So they fall into the trap of cheating, right? And so I'm not talking about morals right now. I'm not talking about what is right or wrong. I'm just talking about the psychology of why this stuff happens. So today we're going to talk about why avoidance may cheat, okay? But that doesn't mean all do. I've worked with some dismissive avoidance and fearful avoidance who have cheated. I've also worked with plenty who have not, okay? So we're going to talk about this and we're going to break this video up into sections, okay? I'm going to let you guys know that there are both plenty of folks who do not cheat and never will cheat. So please remember this. The sections we're going to talk about is why fearful avoidance cheat. So that's going to be the first section. And the second section is going to be why dismissive avoidance cheat, because it's different sometimes, okay? So let's first go with the fearful avoidance, considering I had mentioned they tend to cheat a little bit more often. That doesn't mean they always do, okay? But why? So the very first one is, like I had mentioned, they feel like they're not getting their needs met, but more common with fearful avoidance, they don't realize it or they're denying it in fear of being rejected. So they end up, not on purpose, but they start connecting with somebody else. It's usually somebody who's close to them. It could be close to them, but not emotionally close. So when I mean close, I mean they see them frequently. Most of the time, it's going to be a coworker, right? Somebody that they see frequently and they have no choice but to connect with. And so that connection and bond builds accidentally because they're not seeking it out. It's just two coworkers, right? Then what ends up happening is they realize they're getting their needs met by this person, but they're not getting their needs met by their partner, the needs that they were not aware of. So they think, why does this feel so good? But they don't realize why, because they're still denying their needs or they don't realize it. So that's one of the first reasons, okay? The next one is, unfortunately, this happens too. They're securing a backup partner. So this usually means an individual feels like their relationship is unstable. This is typically why fearful avoidants do it. And they feel like their feelings of abandonment is coming up. They might feel like it's not always with suffocation. It's typically more common if they're feeling abandoned and they feel like this relationship is going to end. And they don't want to have that gap in between relationships. Not all fearful avoidants are like this, but some are. And so they do this due to their trust wound. They're afraid that if they are alone, they're never going to have anybody. So you can see that. The next one is actually low self-esteem. I think a lot of people know this one. Like in general, this is a really common reason. People with low self-worth and self-esteem and they feel like their value is not good enough. They don't feel the value. They may cheat genuinely to prove themselves that they're still attractive and valuable. And they use that attention to heal those wounds, or not even heal, but process some of those wounds that they feel like they're not attractive enough. This is proof. And you can see this more commonly if their partner is dismissive avoidant, because their dismissive avoidant partner is not complimenting them as much, not communicating their love and attention. And I made a video about why avoidants don't compliment if you're curious, but those reasons don't always translate well to fearful avoidance, especially if they're leaning anxious. And so they end up cheating, truly, because they want to prove to themselves that they're attractive, okay? The next one is being impulsive. What is it? How would I describe it? Struggling with emotional regulation is probably better. I don't know if impulsivity is the right word, but I guess it could be looking like that from the outside. It's the struggle of emotional regulation, okay? The fear of abandonment and loss can sometimes correlate with impulsive behavior, which can lead to cheating to soothe the intense and stressful feelings that come up in the relationship, okay? So they might feel like the relationship is very uncomfortable and unstable and in a strange way out of control. So what they do is they seek something that they're in control of. If they're the one cheating, they are in control of that impulsive behavior, that variable. Whereas the abandonment and loss, they're not. So they're seeking control, actually. I think that's probably a better way to label it. They're looking for control. The next one is they actually feel like the relationship is overwhelming, or underwhelming. Unfortunately, fearful avoidants don't like underwhelming relationships sometimes. Not all of them, but especially if they're leaning anxious and they want to damage it subconsciously. So a lot of fearful avoidants, especially those that are more anxious, they grew up in very volatile homes and they can feel that underwhelming relationships are not really love. And so they want to damage it. They want to add flavor to it, spice to it. I've literally heard like patients say like flavor and spice. And I'm like, this sounds unhealthy, and it's not their fault. Like, I'm not saying in a bad way, but it's like they perceive it as bland. That's why they're using those words. Relationships are bland. They're either it's overwhelming, which overwhelming is a little different, but underwhelming, they want to damage it. They want to add something detailed. They want to add the romance, like this push and pull type of behavior. And they can feel like by cheating, they can add that romance and that behavior that they're actually afraid if the relationship is stagnant, that they will lose attraction and love for one another. So they feel like they always have to earn it. They always have to add variables to make it different and detailed. And that's not healthy. And so sometimes they're doing that because they're afraid to lose the relationship, interesting enough. And the last one, this one might be a little bit specific, but I do see this, okay? I have quite a bit of fearful avoidance on my caseload, but one in particular shared something, and this is common, okay? They come from very traumatic homes. And I do want to say that a lot of them grew up where their parents cheat on each other, or they are the child of, let's say, the mistress of some person who is their father, but they were never married, and that father was always married to somebody else. So they literally don't see any problem with cheating. They feel like that's part of love. I'm not saying that you should put up with that, but a lot of fearful avoidance, if they grew up in a foster care system or their mother was a worker, like an intimate type worker, and they were born from that environment, they don't know any better. And so they feel that this is the way love and life is. They don't know anything more. I've actually worked with quite a bit of them that fit that category. And so that's another reason, meaning it has literally nothing to do with your relationship. It has to do with their perception of love. Okay, so fearful avoidance. So why do dismissive avoidance cheat, right? Dismissive avoidance are the more detached and closed off of all the attachment styles. So why would they cheat, considering they suppress their needs? Why would they go and reach out needs? I thought they wanted to be alone. A lot of people think that way. And that's probably why dismissive avoidance don't cheat as much as fearful avoidance, but they do. And so I'm going to mention those reasons. The first one is they actually feel like the relationship is suffocating. This is not common though, but it does happen. It's a little suffocating and they want to damage it to get rid of that feeling of suffocation. Anything. Honestly, avoidants don't cheat as often with this. That's usually a more last resort, but they might start picking fights. They might start distancing themselves. They're trying everything to just get space in the relationship. And that's not healthy. And so the pressure is intense. And so by cheating or doing anything, the expectations have lowered. You already think they're a bad person, and so they won't be pressured by that expectation. So if this is part of the issue or you're afraid this will happen, just lower some expectations, unfortunately, but truly, if you're with an avoidant, you're not going to get a secure love right away. Or keep yourself a little more independent or occupied so that they can start being more comfortable with the developing relationship. This is not as much of an issue if the relationship is already developed and you guys are both healing, okay? The next one is similar. Maybe it's not that the relationship is intense or too much expectations, but they're searching for freedom. So they might feel suffocated and they're searching for more freedom. They might feel like they want more autonomy, okay? It's a little different than the overwhelming feelings and expectations, but they want freedom, like they want to do certain things themselves or alone. And they feel like if they cheat, they'll get that space, maybe because you'll be angry or maybe you guys will break up or have a break or whatever it is. And it's a knee-jerk reaction, but it's them searching for that autonomy. So if you're afraid of this happening, make sure that you build in autonomy for both of you guys, okay? The next one, and I would say that this is the last one that's more common with dismissive avoidance. This one is unfortunately can be taken both directions, and it's not right. It's not right. So I'm not trying to say it's right, but I'm going to explain it a little bit. They want to leave, and they have tried to leave, but the anxious, preoccupied, or fearful avoidant partner of theirs reacted very intensely, and so they shut down, and so they felt like they couldn't leave. I'm not saying that they couldn't. They're a grown person. They could, but they felt like they couldn't because your reaction was really, really intense. So now they're trying to find another way of leaving without having that same emotional reaction. So they feel like, okay, if I cheat, this will prove I really want to get out of here. That's what they think. It's not good, but they do that. So how can you reduce the chances of somebody cheating? This will be the third section that I add. I didn't talk about it earlier, but I'm just going to add it at the end of this video. And the first one is respecting your partner's boundaries. This is very important. If you respect your partner's boundaries, it doesn't mean that you can't expect change, but be gentle with these adjustments, because that's going to make them feel suffocated. They're going to feel like the relationship is not in their perspective, and they're afraid of that. So respecting boundaries is very important. The next one is do not attempt to control their actions and let them be free to be themselves. That doesn't mean you can't ask for adjustment. And I make so many videos on how to get that, so you can look at them. But for now, I'm just mentioning those points. You want to make sure that you both feel like you're getting some needs met while still having some independence and autonomy, okay? The next one, which I think is probably one of the more important ones, remind them that you are trustworthy, both verbally and physically. For fearful avoidance especially, you're not going to leave. You're going to try and make it work. You're not angry. You're not upset, unless you are, but you mention that in a calm way, right? You translate it in a way where they can hear it. It's palatable to them. Mention that you're trustworthy. Show that you're trustworthy, okay? The next one is be consistent. That does not mean that you have to be at their beck and call. It doesn't mean that you have to always be there. You have to accept things, that you're a doormat. No, I'm just saying be consistent and be predictable, okay? And the next one, which is very important, okay? Call your partner out if they're doing something that makes you uncomfortable and set a standard. If you feel like this is reasonable, you have the right to say it. You have that right. I don't appreciate you doing that, or I feel uncomfortable with this person. I'm not telling you what to do, but I also want to understand that our relationship is stable. What's going on? Or I don't appreciate that. To be honest, I would like if you stop doing that. Whatever it is, it's your relationship. I'm not going to judge, but you know what's best for your relationship and how that looks, okay? I hope this video was helpful. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.